night. She reached up to the sky of stars and caught the red-hot light of the North Star.
Greetings and welcome back as always. Thank you all so much for joining me today. On Saturday, November 1st, the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace and Reparations is holding its 17th annual Black People's March on the White House, followed by a conference on Sunday, November 2nd. This year's theme, Don't Agonize, Organize. What is the state of U.S. crisis internationally and domestically? Fed military occupation of U.S. cities, attack on rights, and the Uhuru 3 case was the canary in the coal mine. As we look at marches such as these, we have the No Kings March coming up this Saturday. What signals are being sent? Let's connect some dots and find out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.
Welcome to the Connecting the Dots podcast with Dr. Wilmer Leon, and I am Wilmer Leon. With each show, my guests and I provide insight and analysis into current events and the broader historical context in which most of these events take place. Let's quickly look at some of today's headlines. The U.S. military carries out new Caribbean strike, but this time survivors have been found for the first time. In what U.S. officials describe as an unprecedented twist in the campaign against alleged narcotics traffickers, the U.S. military carried out a strike yesterday against a suspected drug vessel in the Caribbean, and for the first time, there were survivors among the crew. And some of the family members of these survivors have said all they were doing was fishing. This could prove to be a big problem for the administration. And check this out. The head of the U.S. military's Southern Command is stepping down, officials say. Admiral Alvin Halsey is leaving less than a year into his tenure as the Pentagon escalates attacks against boats in the Caribbean. Now, it's unclear why Halsey is suddenly departing less than a year into what is typically a 3-year job and in the midst of the biggest operation in his 37-year career. But one current and one former U.S. official, both of whom spoke on the conditions of anonymity, say that Halsey had raised concerns about the mission and the attacks on the alleged drug boats. And yes, we have an African-American male who is stepping up and challenging these extrajudicial murders in the Caribbean. Trump threatens to bring American troops to Gaza. Quote, if Hamas continues to kill people in Gaza, which was not the deal, we will have no choice but to go in and kill them. Thank you for your attention on this matter, end quote. Okay, Donald, see how far that gets you. Finally, ex-NATO leader disputes Trump's Russia stance. President Trump has expressed support for NATO to shoot down Russian aircraft allegedly violating alliance airspace following Estonia's reports of 3 MiG-31s entering its skies. NATO leaders, including Jean-Paul Palomares and Ursula von der Leyen, have warned such actions could escalate tensions. Estonia has requested Article 4 consultations, which are now under review. I'll just say this. Folks, remember, Russia doesn't bluff and Russia don't play. So mess around and find out if you want to, but take my advice, Donald. That's not a good idea. On today's episode, the issue before us is Black liberation movements have been at the forefront of organized resistance from the get-go, including the Garveyites of the early 20th century, the Black Power movement of the 1960s, and today's Uhuru movement led by the African People's Socialist Party. What is at the core of this? Who is organizing this? And what are the impacts of it? Let's talk to my guest. He's the former international president of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement and is a steering committee member for the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations. He also writes for the Burning Spear newspaper and co-hosts the Black Power Talks podcast for Black Power 96. Dr. Matsemela Odom, welcome to Connecting the Dots.
Hey, Uhuru, I'm happy, and you got it right, Matsemela. Yeah, so yeah, you got it right. Thank you.
Oh man, I practiced. Come on now, I'm not gonna bring you on. I'm not gonna bring you on my show and insult you. I'm calling you Frank. Come on, man. Welcome.
No, right on.
Yeah. So the 1st of November, this march on the White House. What's behind it? What's the mission?
All right, yeah. So the 1st of November, we're having our 17th annual Black People's March on the White House. Our first Black People's March on the White House actually was held in 2009 following the election. Some people say selection of President Barack Obama, and underneath the understanding that, it's that African people, Black people here in the United States need to have the capacity to push our own agenda. We know that with the 2008 election, African people, Black people in the United States were being told that was the apex of what we had been fighting for, and it was time for us to just sit back and be quiet and things of that sort. I mean, we see even nowadays, we even see there was a campaign that we ran in St. Petersburg, Florida, for local city council, and someone told us that Barack Obama's election was our reparations and things of that sort. So that's the impetus behind what we've been doing for the last 17 years. This year we see it is a very crucial time for us to be holding the Black People's March on the White House. Like I said, 17th annual Black People's March on the White House on Saturday, and on Sunday there's going to be what's titled the Black People's Conference. This year's theme is "Don't Agonize, Organize." Looking at the state of crisis, U.S. crisis internationally and domestically, we understand that it's absolutely important for people to confront the state of affairs for African people in the U.S., but also internationally with organization. For us, this is important because President Trump is I mean, he's got this whole crisis thing, one crisis after another to keep people disorganized, destabilized, and on the defensive. But what we understand is that it's important for us to sort of take a hold of this crisis that's happening within the U.S. and internationally, and go on the counteroffensive and use this. Use this as momentum, as ability for us to build as African people around the world. So when you think about social movement organizing, you got to, to some extent, I've been taught you can think about it in the realm of, like, say, for example, martial arts, right? The truth
Mhm.
is that when your enemy is on the attack, that's actually the best time to counterattack, because they are destabilized, and we know, and the sort of destabilization of the U.S. economy, or actually the global economy, not the U.S. economy, but the global capitalist world, has been identified by Chairman Omali Yeshitela as an uneasy equilibrium. And it's when the social system is in a state of disequilibrium, or that we have to go on the counteroffensive. And in that sense, this Black People's March is a crucial strategic point in us doing for ourselves.
You mentioned now is an opportune time to go on the counteroffensive, and I agree with you 1,000%. As you use that term, what does that look like in just some very, very general terms?
Yeah, so of course, when we talk about counteroffensive, some people have even said something to the level of existence, let alone is resistance, and we're not that simple, but we are talking about, well, first off, the Black is Back Coalition. So the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations is an organization of organizations,
Mm-hmm.
right? There are 17 different Black rights organizations that make up our coalition, and our coalition is guided by what is titled the National Black Political Agenda for Self-Determination, which wasn't only drafted, but it was taken to the people around the United States to win the unity of the people with our platform. At the top of our platform, and really even a prerequisite for organizational membership in our coalition is first and foremost the elevation of Black women to full equal partnership in our struggle, Black community control of the police, the immediate release of all political prisoners, the demand for reparations. But it's important to understand that our understanding of reparations is that reparations is a process of waging the revolution. It's not a concession, and surely not a partnership of sorts, or with the U.S. government. So the demand for reparations, full employment and national minimum wage, struggling for that is going to be important, as well as halting the gentrification that's taking place in our communities through empowerment, stabilization, and restoration of traditional Black neighborhoods. What Chairman Omali Yeshitela has argued is that for many years now, for decades, is that what African people have endured is a negative public policy of police containment, but that negative public policy of police containment needs to be replaced with a positive public policy of economic development. And I'm in the Blacks Back Coalition, but I'm also inside the Uhuru movement. And in the Uhuru movement, this is precisely what we do. We do this through what we define as dual and contending power, meaning that sort of we build the political and economic ability to combat, the powers that be, be it domestic colonialism or international colonial structures. But we also build for ourselves, really preparing to be self-governing. So this includes 50 plus economic institutions within the Uhuru movement, which includes, but is not limited to, the work of the Black is Back. Economic projects around health, education, housing, developing in North St. Louis right now, with something called the Black Power Blueprint, housing for formerly incarcerated people. And, like I said, we got a 50+ year track record on doing this. You mentioned Marcus Garvey. We define ourselves as 21st century Garveyites in the work that we do, because we know that, we understand it's important to do for self, but we also know that sort of the solution to the crisis that the world faces right now are African people gaining self-determination. It's not even something that's just going to free African people. It's going to free all people.
Is the Black political agenda that you just referenced, is that based on or tied any way to the Gary Convention proclamation from 72? Because one of the things,
actually, go for it, because in my head I was thinking, I should probably mention the Gary Convention 1972 and stuff like that.
One of the things that I get asked all the time, or that people will be inclined to say is, well, Black people don't have an agenda. I said, well, no, we do.
Right.
We need to create an agenda. Well, if you go back to, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Go back to Gary, and in fact, not only that, you can go back to Gary. You can go back to the Black Panther Party program, which was based on the African Nelson Mandela's
the African National Congress,
the ANC platform. So it's not as thank you, the ANC platform. So it's not as though these things have never existed.
Right. I mean, I think the question is not whether sort of organizations have an agenda. The question is the way through which that agenda can grip the people. Right. Wait
a minute. Just let me interject one more thought. And the reason I go back to Gary is because, and I say this to all those watching this and listening, so many of the elements or the bases of those elements, the problems that they were addressing in Gary are the same problems that we're trying to address today. Go ahead.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, because, the African People's Socialist Party was formed African Liberation Day, 1972, for the purpose of reviving and completing the Black Power movement. And we know Chairman Omali Shatella is founder of the African People's Socialist Party, but before he was before the formation of the African People's Socialist Party, he began as a SNCC organizer in St. Petersburg, Florida, and then after that there was a group called the Junta of Militant Organizations, JOMO. So at the time of the Gary Conference, I think the party was still in formation. I forget the actual date of the Gary Conference, but some of our co-founders actually attended the Gary convention that year in 1972. One of our martyrs, in fact, by the name of Lawrence Mann, as well as another comrade who's still with us, Vince Lawrence. They were there in Gary in 1972. So that was an important moment.
That was March 10th.
Exactly. So exactly. So that was March. So we talking about, conference. So there's three groups that create the APSP, African People's Socialist Party. You got Lawrence Mann's group, which is called the Black Rights Fighters. They organized really Black migrant workers in Florida. Then there was a group out of the University of Florida called the Black Study Group, headed by a sister by the name of Keturah Carey. And then JOMO, of course. All three came together May of that year. So the party hadn't been fully formed just yet, but JOMO, the Black Student Group, and Black Rights Fighters were all still working together. And Chairman had been invited, but I think that there was some other things that conflicted. So he had sent Lawrence Mann and Vince Lawrence and the other couple comrades out there to Gary. So we were there in Gary, and it was an important moment. One of the limitations, I would argue, is that what came, there's a way through which sometimes when people think of political organization and political coalition, it tends to be the revolutionaries, the radicals, putting aside what we believe to find common ground with the liberal elements of the political strata. But what happened was, so following up on Gary, right? So Gary was an important moment, as was to some extent the Pan-African Congress that took place 2 years after that, 1974. But an important convening, I would say, even setting the trajectory for the founding of the Black is Back Coalition, is going to be the 1977. In April 1977, there was an event held at Amherst University, UMass Amherst, actually, in Massachusetts, organized by some people know him as Max Stanford, some people know him as Muhammad Ahmed, but it was called the National Black Radical Organizers Conference. And Chairman Omali Yeshitela gave an address at that one. A shortened version of it, we call it the Tactics and Strategies speech, but it's something like, to the extent of the tactics and strategies for building, mass organization. What I think is important about that, and in many ways even a lesson from Gary, is the importance of forming coalition, right? We need coalition, but that coalition must be an anti-colonial coalition led by anti-colonial objectives. It must, of course, participation, electoral politics is a part of that struggle. And I think one big thing that came out of Gary was the sort of the electoral question. But we also know that one limitation of Gary, was the way through which some of the people who showed up at Gary, as you could probably attest to, were there, in the sole interest of the Democratic Party. And what Chairman Omali Yeshitela has noted is that I want to take a step back and just bring it to contemporary crisis, because we know that the Supreme Court seems they're about to gut the Voting Rights Act, Civil Rights Act, and all that other stuff, and I think that the platform that the Black is Back Coalition has allows for us to understand in the correct political and historical context what's taking place right now, but also where we can go from here, right, and things of that sort. But I was just saying, short, yeah, Gary is important in that, and the Gary platform is important. But what I would say Chairman Omali Yeshitela laid down in 1977 is what really guides the not only the Hoover movement but the Black is Back Coalition. There's 2 points that I think come out of that. The first goal of mass organizing needs to be to win the masses of African people back to the position of political independence, right? We know that sort of a campaign of counterinsurgency, which includes demoralization and mass assassinations and jailings and all that stuff, that's driven Black people out of political life, right? That's why, like, our Black People's March is just such a different thing, in the sense that sort of like the march is a tactic in a larger strategy for African freedom. Right. So some people say for some people, the march or demonstration is the strategy. Right. But for us, the march is tactical. But we got to win people into the position of political independence. And one thing I really love about that document, and if you guys email us, we can even send you the document, is that a chairman says, because people have not been won to the position of independence, don't assume that they're anti-independence. Anti-independence is integrationism. That's how Chairman defines it. But we got millions of our people who are not sort of in political life at all, right? Not because they don't want to be free, but the thing is that an independent. But the thing is, they need the organization and the political leadership to help direct them in that way. So I know I said a whole lot, but I would say, Gary is an important historical reference. However, in 1972, in 2022, the same year that the Uhuru movement was attacked. The Uhuru movement was celebrating its 50th anniversary. We know that was the 50th anniversary of the Gary Convention as well. So yeah.
Robert Brown, thank you very much for that $5 super sticker. Greatly appreciate that. You just made the point that the march is tactical and not the tactic, but tactical. And a lot of people will say, man, what is with all this marching? And we, golly, we're tired. And what they don't really understand when you go back to the civil rights movement and the marches of that era and that time is that the marches were tactical. There were two other major strategies that were working in concert. You had the action in the courts,
right?
You had the action in the legislature, and you had the action in the streets. And they were all, for example, they were marching to pass the 65 Voting Rights Act. They were marching to pass the Housing Rights Act. They were marching in support of Brown. There was always a very clear legislative agenda and or a judicial agenda, as opposed to now, man, you get some of these organizations that come out here, it's just an afternoon of screaming and yelling and pitching and bitching and what's the agenda afterwards?
Right. I really appreciate what you're saying, because especially the historical reference, because the truth is that the truth is that the not even just the 1960s. I think we can go all the way back to the 1800s and the black movement to end slavery within the United States. And they had all three of those elements you talked about as well. You got the legal strategy, you had the judicial strategy, you had the mass mobilization. And this is so important because it's important to note that some of the legal precedent that President Trump is using to suggest he has the ability to send the Marines and other federal forces into the community is actually built on a precedent that the U.S. state took against African people and our allies during even the 1840s and the 1850s and things like that. And that's important to know. We people know about the Dred Scott decision, but they don't know that in Washington, D.C. alone, there were over 300 of those legal cases. I think they were called freedom suits. And those freedom suits go back all the way to the late 1700s. They had a lady named Elizabeth Freeman who had a freedom suit. Actually, to be honest, they go back to the 1600s and things of that sort. But so that complex strategy of sort of mass mobilization, fighting them in the courts, legal fighting them legislatively, and things like that. All of these things, I think, are absolutely important things for you to lay out scientifically. And yes, for some people, the mass mobilization is it. That's it gives them a rush. We saw in 2017 after President Trump was inaugurated the first time, and then this one, you talk about the No Kings thing that's coming up, and this isn't a slight at any of the people, but the thing is, that's why we have to have our own agenda, because the thing is that mass movement, that mass energy, people that will be showing up at the No Kings thing, people that come to other mobilizations, right? All that stuff is energy being used to achieve other people's political objectives. We need to be pushing towards our own political objectives, which are African people to be free, to be self-governing, to self-determined, and self-determination. I tell people, I teach, it's not like, it sounds like it's an individual thing, but it's not an individual thing, right? It's a collective thing for, so I think that that is just I think that that's important. I think the reason why I was thinking about the 1960s, but even going all the way back to the 19th century, is because it's a show of force, right? It's a show of, here's how many people we can organize around an issue, especially if we're talking about, Malcolm X brought to us that, we're not a national minority, we're a global majority. They said essentially 3 events brought, probably, actually I'll say 4 events probably brought the largest amount of mass mobilization around the world. And all of them have to do with Black people. First is Jack Johnson's victory in 1910. In that one, we got white people rioting all around the world. The second one I would say is the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. The third one is the assassination of Dr. King, and the fourth one is George Floyd's murder. Right. So in all of those instances, we see the groundswell of people, right, around different issues. 3 of them we would say, of course, are progressive groundswells and things of that sort. But I mean, but what has to be attached to that is a political agenda that pushes us towards independence and being self-governing. Because if not, without that, what happens is, just like in 2020 and other mass mobilizations, Rodney King. What about, yes, salute, exactly, Rodney King and others. What happens is other people achieve their objectives, and we already see it. We see it with the No Kings, and we see it with all this other stuff where essentially the Democratic Party comes in and just swoops up that mass momentum, to the extent that, like, what we really have now is Black people essentially being told that sort of political act, being baited into a form of political activity that really sort of represents no political agenda, right? At all. President Trump has proven that, President Trump has clearly proven that, like, all the stuff that we was told couldn't be done because of us, and we got to trust the process, and when they go low, we go high, all this other stuff we were told, why all these excuses, why our agenda was never met by previous administrations. Trump says, you know what, I'm gonna do whatever the heck I want to do. We demand what we want for justice, though.
To that point, it's better, or it's easier to ask forgiveness,
right,
than beg for permission.
Right.
So, when you just said that about him, that's what just came to mind, and that's what so many people have been. If you just put it in the binary Democratic Republican Party politics, that's why so many people have become so disillusioned with the Democrats. They don't fight for nothing, and they don't do anything.
Correct.
So that's right now, as we look at with the shutdown of the government. I was telling my students this today, that Trump, as it relates to the shutdown, Trump was betting on history, and history tells us that the Democrats were going to fold.
Right.
And this time, at least as we sit here right now, because the numbers in terms of polling are on their side, they're holding their ground. And Trump wasn't expecting that. And now he doesn't know what to do. But I go through that just to make the point that one of the incredibly frustrating things for so many people in terms of the established party politics is the fact that the Democrats don't do anything.
That's
and let me say, Dessalines Weaver, new member, thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us. We greatly appreciate it. So following along the lines of the party politics question, you've been talking about political liberation. How does that idea of, or no, let me put it another way. Does that idea of political liberation fit into electoral politics and in this country? And if so, Is it third party? Is it green? Is it how does Uhuru and this political liberation fit into, or does it fit into, the electoral politics dynamic?
Yeah, without a doubt, it does. I mean, you got people who, like I said, they speak of, yeah. So I would just say yes, without a doubt. The Uhuru movement itself has run candidates ever since the 1960s for elected office. But one thing that really got us under the scope of the government is the fact that for something like 6 years now, I think the Black is Back coalition has been running an electoral campaign school. Every spring we hold an electoral campaign school. The most recent one was this April in St. Louis, in which we train people on the importance and the strategy of entering into the electoral arena, the importance of getting African people, Black people, Black working class people on juries, and this is things in which we even ourselves, even many of us, have made, have grown around these questions and things of that sort. In 2021, we had a member of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement and Black is Back Coalition. He was put on trial here in San Diego, California, where I'm at, for pepper spraying some cops because in August 2020, he was at a demonstration and the police went to beat up on a brother, and the police dropped their pepper spray canister. So he picked up the pepper spray canister and defended this brother who was getting beat up on. So they put him on trial. He was looking at almost 20 years in prison. And what happened was that we put together a serious campaign, a mass campaign with the slogan of Black Community Control of the Police in defense of this brother, and a jury of 9 white people, 3 Asians, no Black people at all, came back with a not guilty verdict. They came back so fast with the not guilty verdict that the judge told them, y'all need to wait till the morning. And what's so interesting about that for me, and I think it relates to this other issue, is that times have changed. Times have changed. It was interesting. I saw that DA sit up there and thought that he was the district attorney, do all this stuff, and he thought he was getting it in. Every time he'd say something outlandish, you see this image of disgust, and I thought it was like disgust at the actions around us, around this member. What later on what they said was, no, the clear disgust was for the DA and his trickery. So and white folks, and these libertarians and conservatives and things like that. I mean, none of them was people we necessarily understand as comrades to some extent, except for one girl. She was brought on. One woman, she was brought on there because both sides liked her. She said that all her family was law enforcement. But then also because all her family was law enforcement, she said that she know that law enforcement can't be trusted. So it was that I would just say I kind of went in this direction, but bringing it back to the electoral campaign schools, we know it's important for us to exist on all planes. What Chairman says is to not cede any territory, right? We don't want to cede any territory. Now, we're not going to vote our way to freedom, without a doubt. But the truth is, the Voting Rights Act isn't being attacked right now because of what the Democrats believe in. The Voting Rights Act is being attacked right now because of, of course, the fear of Black self-determination and things of that sort. So we do believe in participation in electoral politics. I just want to salute people like State Assemblyman and also City Councilman Charles Barron, Inez Barron out of New York, who have been very, very important roles in the Black is Back Coalition. Sister Belinda Parker Brown, and the electoral and legislative work push, leading the campaign to see in Louisiana, with where they had something called the non-unanimous jury that could give people life in prison, getting that overturned. It's so much very important work that's being done on the electoral arena, but our understanding of it is work that empowers the masses of people to drive us towards self-determination. It's not a belief that one person or another alone are the ones that's going to win.
Let me. You're right. It's not. It's not working alone. We've got new members we have to recognize. Michael Smith, thank you very much. MV Marable, thank you very much for joining us. Charlotte Hill, also known as Queen Mother, thank you very much. RLG, greatly appreciate the new members joining the team. Really appreciate it. And Kevin Baptiste says, and very correctly, please include in your discussion the need for international solidarity. Africans born in America need to understand its importance.
Was that
that was the next point for you to speak to.
Okay, can you repeat that?
Yeah. Please include in your discussion the need for international solidarity. Africans born in America need to understand its importance.
Yeah, in fact, I was just talking about the tactics and strategies for Black liberation. Mm-hmm. And one of those tactics and strategies is to win support for African liberation outside of U.S. borders. Another one is to win support outside of the Black community inside U.S. borders and things of that sort. I mean, we talked about Malcolm, but I didn't mention the Bandung Conference, 1955. So we're looking at 70 years since Bandung, and the way through which the Bandung Conference really changed Black political trajectory, and understanding that we are part of a world majority. See, one thing that's really sort of stood out to me recently, especially about what's happened since this new presidency from President Donald Trump, is the fact that I believe that sort of like they're going back to these old tactics. And the reason why we're motivated in the Black is Back Coalition and in the Uhuru movement, that we have what it takes to lead a counteroffensive and to fight for independence, is because the tactics that they're going back to, these are the exact same tactics that they've always gone back to. You can go back to 1989, in which Chairman Omar Shatella has an editorial inside the Burning Spear newspaper about the police occupation of Washington, D.C., the federal occupation of Washington, D.C. underneath the guise of the drug czar of that time. But you just changed some names and some people. It's the exact same story of what's going on right now. The difference is that colonial power, U.S. global hegemony, is not the same, right? So we know they tactics, but we're in a better position now to fight back as long as we get organized. I want to salute the comrades from Unión del Barrio, because the comrade there is talking about international solidarity. Recently, we held the International Convention for the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, and one of the groups we brought on is a Mexican liberation organization called Unión del Barrio. They're headquartered in San Diego, but they're all throughout the West Coast, and they're growing. Actually, to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised they don't have people right now within the Spanish-speaking communities of the northeastern United States, the Midwest, and things like that. But they have led that pushback. If you when you see the sort of pushback, they organize these things called the community self-defense coalitions, which really are a blueprint for how we need to be organizing against the federal the federal occupation of our communities as well. Know your rights trainings, cop watches, protection of the community. So yeah, that international support is absolutely important. But for the people that follow the Uhuru 3 case, it's international work of the Uhuru movement that brought us underneath the scope of the U.S. government. I really think that it's not I really don't think it's a coincidence that they came down on us at the same time in which they realized that the war that they had been waging, black, I mean, in which the African continent collectively had rejected the war in Ukraine. I think that sort of the international voice of the Uhuru movement and Chairman Omali Shatella has been an important vessel in gaining that international support for our movement. You got the 2019 Oxford debate speech that Chairman Omali Shatella waged. I mean, thousands, I want to say millions of people in Nigeria alone have seen that speech. And I think the last time I saw it, it was at least 10 million people on the African continent, but I think the numbers are way bigger than that. So yes, international solidarity is important. And it's important for it to be an anti-colonial international solidarity, because that's when people can begin to see our shared purpose, and things of that sort. So yeah, that international work is absolutely important.
The international work is definitely important. Carol Asbaram, thank you very much for the super sticker and for the compliment. Because if Carol is given a compliment as that, then we know it is a very good show. Carol, thank you very much. Love you, sister. Love you dearly. Wow. Peace in the World gave us a $50 super sticker. Peace in the World. Thank you very much for that incredibly generous contribution. And sticking just a quick point on the international front, you mentioned that the countries on the continent were opposed to the war in Ukraine. And it's also important to understand that Ukrainians have found their way into some of the conflicts in the Sahel region, and that's in some of the military equipment that was targeted for Ukraine was misdirected or redirected and made its way to the continent as well. So this attempt to recolonize is ongoing, and that's why I think it's very, very important for people to pay attention to what's going on in Burkina Faso, what's been going on in Niger, and support those efforts as much as possible, because there is and will continue to be pushback to those freedom movements.
That's correct. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And I think sort of, one thing that I remember Chairman Omali Shatella saying in 2022 was that everyone has an Africa plan except for Africa, right? So African people have to have an Africa plan. Black people in the United States need to understand that our fortune is tied with the destiny of Africa and African people. I know that historically studies, there's a good book by a guy named Bernard Magubani called The Ties That Bind. If you ever, and one thing I think he finds is that sort of when African revolution, African struggle is high, when Black people in the U.S. are presented with the true representation of what Africa is, then Black people in the U.S. Always identify with Africa and what it means to be African. But that takes us back to the Black People's March on the White House and the importance of the Black People's March on the White House of going to the people, right? Chairman Amaya declares that now is the time to join this escalating struggle of the oppressed to overturn the colonial system that thrust itself into existence 600 years ago with the European trade in Black bodies that were colonized in Africa and dispersed throughout the world. Chairman, in short, Chairman has also said that just like Black mothers tell their children, African people have the ability to tell colonial capitalism that we brought you in the world and we will take you out. You know, and that is an important position that we hold, is that, you know, it's not some sort of race nationalism to say that that the African people sit at the center of all of this. I, like you said, I think with the weapons being diverted from the Ukraine back to the Sahel, show us what the whole thing was about in the first place. Remember, they tried to say, well, if Africans don't support this, then how will Africans get the grain? Because their grain comes from the Ukraine. I'm like, they get it by growing grain in Africa. I mean, the idea that they use our dependency as a support for further dependency is absolutely ridiculous. I would just say this. I remember during the first Trump presidency, everyone was upset that Trump didn't go to Dover Air Force Base and greet the body of that African man who was killed. I think it was in Niger or something like that. Remember that the African soldier, the Black soldier from the U.S. Army, was killed, and then they brought his body back, and Trump didn't go salute it. If you remember, most of the people's political concern was that Trump is such a racist because he won't see this guy who was fighting for our freedom, his body. And I was like, wait a minute. The U.S. is at battle in Niger. You know what I mean? Like I was like, so y'all all focus on how Trump is racist. I'm focused on the fact that a war is being waged in Niger, and they've admitted it to you. And to divert us away from that, Trump does the whole racist thing. But we say that racism is the ideological support for colonialism, and African people only get free by struggling against colonialism. And I just wanted to bring that up because I remember, like I said, what was that, 2018 or something like that, when that brother died, and then everyone was like, oh, he didn't salute the body at Dover Air Force Base. I'm like, wait a minute. They just told you that the United States is at war in Niger. Hotbed throughout the continent, all throughout the continent. Right now, I want to say per capita, the United States have more bases and military installations on the continent of Africa than anywhere else in the world. So the concern for the future, African self-determination, it's really African self-determination or further dependency. I want to salute Sandy, who said that she learned so much from Chairman Amaya and she agrees with what Chairman says. The road to socialism is painted black, and that's absolutely correct. If a person believes in international solidarity, international rights, and things like that, they will go to the blackisbackcoalition.org and find out more about the Black People's March on the White House and be there with us.
To the point that you just made about colonialism, Dr. King told us that I'm convinced that the war in Vietnam has played havoc with our domestic destinies. The bombs that fall in Vietnam explode at home. And when you mentioned colonialism, what we see happening, or what we saw happen in Los Angeles with the militarization of the National Guard and the Marines, that's colonialism.
That's
what
correct.
We see playing itself out in Chicago
is
domestic colonialism.
Correct.
The bombs that explode, that are launched abroad, will explode at home. And that's why people need to understand that what's happening in Gaza the genocide in Gaza does matter to us.
Yeah. I remember it was in Ferguson. You know, our movement is headquartered in North St. Louis, Florissant Road, the exact same street where Mike Brown, not too far from where Mike Brown was killed. You know, they were showing that, you know, literally the same weapons that were being used in both Gaza and St. Louis were the same weapons manufacturers. It like you are absolutely correct. It's not an either or in terms of struggling here within the U.S. and struggling internationally. And see, the reason why I really like coming into the Black is Back Coalition and the Hura movement is because when you step into you step into 600 years of anti-colonial activity. Chairman notes that, you know, it's our duty to fight for liberated territory everywhere we are. And I think that you're absolutely correct in understand, and it's not a metaphor. See, I remember when I was first coming into study, you know, as a part of the as a student, you know, I remember, you know, in 1980s, not 80s, I was in college in the late 90s, early 2000s, and professors talking about, you know, domestic colonialism and internal colonization theory as if it was a past concept, a concept whose time had passed and things like that. But, you know, in short, colonialism argues that essentially our oppression has a material value for this social system, and that's why, I think honestly that's what Trump has been hoping for. I think that sort of, you know, he's been hoping for that. You know, like I sat back and I thought about this recently. I said, if you look at the opioid crisis, look at that bomb factory that just exploded over in Tennessee or wherever it was, Kentucky, Tennessee, or something like that.
Yeah.
Man. They had
Tennessee.
I sit back and realize that like all of this shows that like even with the heightened violence against our community, he cannot solve the problems. He can't even solve the problems for white folks. He ain't bringing back coal, ain't bringing back Americans' political dominance. China is the number one trading partner with Latin America. You know, I was looking at this thing about soybeans. You seen that soybean report? In which soybean farmers are on there crying and things like that because
that market isn't coming back.
It ain't coming back. It is not coming back. Remember when the guy from China went and said, you know, go inside your house and tell me how much stuff you got that come from China. And then he opened up his hands and says, here's all the stuff I have that comes from the United States. So that's the real question. And that's why the anti-imperialist, anti-colonial analysis that the Black is Back Coalition brings forth, and that we'll be bringing forth at the Black People's March on the White House, is so important because it directs us to really the question is what can be done? What is to be done? And what's to be done is we say, don't agonize, get organized.
Wow. Well, Dr. Matsemela Odom, thank you, my brother. Are you from San Diego?
I'm from Long Beach. I'm from Long Beach, but you know, I got.
I'm from Sacramento. That's why I asked.
Oh, you from the Sac Town?
Yeah, man.
Okay. Hey, you know, it's a lot of good people out of Sacramento. A couple bad ones though too. What's his name out of Sac Town? And what's the brother that pushed the anti-affirmative action stuff? He was from Sac Town. Ward Connerly.
Oh, what? I grew up in that neighborhood.
But Dr. West is from Sac Town.
I talked to Cornell yesterday.
Sly Stone was a musician at Dr. West's church when he was coming up there in Sac Town. So no, yeah. Sac Town is so important, especially when you talk about colonialism overlapping with overlapping colonialisms and oppressions, even of Black folks. You know, Sacramento is an absolutely important story to tell. Yeah, I was just up in Sacramento a week and a half ago.
Wow. Well, two things. One, I remember Ward Connerly when he was Wardell Connerly and he was Black. I go that far back when he was a brother.
Hey, Wardell, we know that's a Black name.
His name was Wardell Connerly, and he was a Black man once upon a time.
Right.
and for folks listening, I just did an hour with Dr. West yesterday, which will air on my Sirius XM show Saturday from 11 to 12 on Sirius XM channel 126. So folks, check that out. Kevin Baptiste, my brother, thank you for the $10 super sticker. You are spot on. Dr. O, black folks are the litmus test for what atrocities, both mental and physical, can be perpetuated on the rest of the populace, near and abroad. Appreciate your
analysis. Can I add something to that real quick? Because we talked about Palestine, and the thing about Palestine is absolutely important because, when people speak of genocide, you got the horrendous unaliving of people. That's one aspect of it, but the even deeper erasure is the way through which you erase the complete identity of people, right? You saw something like former President Obama put out some statement and supposedly in support of the ceasefire that has emerged, but he didn't even he barely even identified the people. I don't think he mentioned any people Palestine as a place. He talked about the people. He talked about the people of Gaza, but then he talks about citizens of Israel. See, this is the thing that people have to understand, right? First off, the partitioning of the Middle East was based on the partitioning of Africa, but also when you look at the African situation in the United States, the solution is to take those people, and this is because, they talk about all this opposition inside Israel. The opposition inside Israel is basically liberal opposition inside Israel, which seeks to, basically kill off the more radical elements and imprison the more radical elements, and then turn the rest of the people of Palestine into just what the Palestinians themselves call 48ers, the people that are trapped inside Israel. They call them Arab Israelis. They don't even call them Palestinian Israelis. They call them Arab Israelis. And what's that sound like? Just sound like us being called African Americans, that like indigenous people being stuck on a plantation, concentration camps known as reservations here within the United States. And then So that really is something people should look at, not just sort of the erasure of the people, which is serious, but also the erasure of people's own self-determined and self-defined identities. All of this is very, very important, and that's why people have to be tapped in and in unity with the most progressive sectors of the Black community as a part of their struggles. I mean, the lessons are all there.
Dr. Matsemela Odom, where can people contact you? Those that are interested, we're going to put up the flyer for the November 1st march on the White House.
Right.
How do people contact you? Where do they go?
So to contact us, go to blackisbackcoalition.org. Blackisbackcoalition.org. You can find registration information there. You can find membership information there as well. For further information, you can also call us directly at 314-669-6480. So blackisbackcoalition.org, or call us at 314-669-6480.
And the number is right there on the flyer.
That's correct. And whether you're going to attend in person or even virtually, please go and register, because you can attend virtually for our conference that's on Sunday. So whether you plan to attend in person or virtually, please go to blackisbackcoalition.org.
Oh, and I see on the 31st of October, you're going to have a press conference at Sankofa Books on Georgia Avenue across the street from Howard University.
Yes. Excellent.
Are you going to be there?
Yeah, I'm planning to be there. I am planning to be there.
I'll be. We'll work that out. We'll bring you back. No, I'm just thinking because I got class, but we'll figure that out. We'll bring you back if we can one more time before the event. And greatly appreciate your time today, and really, my brother, look forward to having you back.
I do as well. Man, I really appreciate it being on here, and you have a big following. It makes sense that you're from out here because you got a big following out here. People,
Oh, really?
Dr. Wilmer Leon, Dr. Wilmer Leon. I'm telling you, you got
Oh,
a
wow.
huge following even out here on the
Well, thank you.
on the West End. So,
On the west, and I'm from South Sacramento, so on the west end of the South Side.
South Sac. South Sac ain't no joke.
Hey, man, been for real for a long time.
Sounds like ain't no joke.
Because Dr. West, I grew up down the street from him. We're from the same neighborhood.
Yeah, what's that? Florin Road.
Man, what you know about Florin Road?
Hey, man.
Well, I grew up on Southland Park Drive.
Oh man, okay, yes. Trust me. I Sacramento was. I told you I was just up in Sacramento about a week and a half ago.
Man, we'll have to talk.
And I want to say shout out to Comrade Kumba, who says to ask Dr. Odom what part of Africa Long Beach is in. That's a comrade that I know. He always has some brother.
I'm glad you saw that because
that's my man.
I thought that had to be an inside joke.
It's a real inside joke.
Okay.
Okay.
But so answer the question. What part of Africa is Long Beach?
Well, what I'll say is that Kwame Nkrumah, as he knows, said that you're not African because you're born in Africa. You're African because Africa was born in you.
There we go. Brother Matsemela Odom, my brother, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And look forward to having you back.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Hey, folks, we're 10,000. We're 59 members away from 10,000, and if I got the following in California that Dr. Odom says I have, then y'all got to help a brother out. Y'all got to put me over the top. Those on the West Coast, y'all got to put me over the top. That's the first point. Also, there are poll questions on YouTube, and we would love for you to check out the poll questions and to provide us with your insight. And did Carol give us another? Did she give us another sticker? Carol. Oh, look at the front page of the Financial Times from last Friday. You'll see why the right does not want the Palestinians there. Okay, Carol, I subscribe to the Financial Times, and I'll have to go back and check that out because I missed that one. So she's on top of the game all the time. Carol, thank you. In fact, here's what we're going to have to do. When we hit 10,000, Carol, we're going to do a show with you. We're going to do it, folks. You got to put me over the top. You got to get me to 10,000. And when you put me over the top, one of the inducements for doing so, we're going to do a show with Carol. Provided I can get her people to talk to my people, and we can work it out. Hey, folks, want to thank you all so much for joining the discussion today. Thank Dr. Odom for joining me. And stay tuned, new episodes next week. Cannot announce who the guest will be on Monday because we're still trying to work through those details. But trust me, as the Moon Man would say, it's going to be a big one. Follow us on social media. All the links are below in the show description. And remember, this is where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge. Talk without analysis is just chatter, and we do not chatter here on Connecting the Dots. See y'all on Monday. Until then, I am Dr. Wilmer Leon. Have a blessed remainder of your day and a phenomenal weekend. Peace. I'm out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.